Alright, hello again ladies and gents. I haven't had a chance to do much this week on the Suzuki motor. I've come in today to do a few jobs that needed to be caught up on, but what I'm going to show you today is the head of the motor. Hasn't obviously been reconditioned, it's still quite dirty, still has a standard camshaft in it, and going to point out just how dismal the valve overlap is here on these actual F8B motors from factory. Now, I apologise for the quality of the picture, but you can just see there the slightest gap between the exhaust valve and the valve seat. I'll come over here and demonstrate on the inlet valve that it really isn't all that much better. Now, I just got the multi-grips on the camshaft there, just ginning around trying to work out how many degrees of valve overlap I'd have there, and I'd struggle to say there'd be any more than 1 or 2 degrees, which not so bad for everyday drivability, but when you're trying to generate power, you really need these two valves to be open together at the end of the exhaust stroke and the start of the inlet stroke for as long as possible within reason, to try and clean that combustion chamber out and get a nice fresh air fuel charge in. You'll also find that once the engine picks up RPM, the exhaust gases leaving the combustion chamber will draw the air and fuel mixture through at a greater rate of knots, which will also assist with improving volumetric efficiency. So yeah, like I said, I haven't really done all that much this week. I've sourced a cam for it. Tig cams, I think they call themselves, down in Brisbane. They're going to help me out with a custom cam grind. Another problem I'm also going to have is the standard inlet manifold has the thermostat housed in it. Now, the reason that you'll see this sort of thing on a standard vehicle is it helps the manufacturer to meet emission regulations. So when they set up the jetting, this is obviously an old car, when they set up the jetting on this car and back in the 70s, they had a constant, they knew what the temperature of the inlet manifold would be, so therefore they were able to work out the air density, air mass, match the right size jets to that sort of situation, and help to simplify the process of meeting the emission regulations at the time. Now, the Suzuki hatch came about back around that era. It was part of what they call a Kita class. Car manufacturers were encouraged by the Japanese government to design small fuel efficient cars so that they were easy to park, would take up less space in the cities. Obviously Japan's a fairly heavily populated area, so they like to make the most of the available space, and building these little tiny cars was one of the ways they were able to achieve that. You can see there I've got me pistons in, all bar one. Unfortunately, my engine reconditioner that I use to do the engine work and source my pistons, probably not his fault, but I didn't get any snap rings, or one oil ring was missing as well, so I have to go see him on Monday and chase that up, get that sorted out, and I'll be able to get this back together, or not back together, but together, and CC the tops of my pistons while the head's away being machined. I'm going to have to work out how much valve lift I'm going to get with this cam, how much duration I'm going to have, and decide whether or not to put a larger inlet valve in. I mean, there's a little bit of room there to go a couple of mil bigger in diameter, but may not be possible depending on the actual distance the valve's going to travel and how much valve overlap I'm going to have. But later on I'll TIG all this up, and I'm going to make a custom manifold to run the road bike carbies on, and I'll have to TIG plates in here and run a little water jacket. I'm not sure where I'll run it yet, might come back up into the top. That'll include the thermostat housing, and that way I can separate the inlet manifold thermally from the cylinder head and keep it as cool as possible. So that way I'm going to ensure that my air density will be as dense as possible right up until the point where it hits the cylinder head, and by that time it's not really going to matter 5/8 of fuck all. Anyway, that's all for today. I'll hopefully put something up again next weekend. Cheers.